What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be ranking all 10 of t- the banquet supply drop characters. The 10 by 10 event that is starting December 10th. It is going to award Paragon and above players with a 7-star copy of 10 champions. And if you're below Paragon, you get 6 stars up until the final day where you get a 7-star Isophyne. And if you're below Thronebreaker, I think it's all 6 stars or all 5 stars, something like that. Really, really good event. Extremely rewarding, and it's all for free. So I thought it'd be fun to rank all of the characters. Just a short little synopsis about where I think they rank. I'm going to go from the bottom, so 10, to the top, so number 1. And I hope this won't be a super long video. It might end up being a little on the longer side, but that's okay. I just want to give people kind of a brief overview of what to expect from each of these characters and where I see them being useful down the line for potentially newer Paragons who maybe don't have a wide 7-star roster yet. This could be something that is to your benefit. And there's a lot of characters in here that are very good. So, starting at the bottom, going for the top, this is all my opinion. You can agree or disagree. This is just my personal feelings on these characters and where I see them being useful in their unawakened state. I'm going into this with the assumption that all of these characters are going to start on people's accounts unawakened. Now, obviously, people who have duplicates of these characters already, or people who have these characters already, will get duplicates, but just at their base, like you pull this character for the first time, no awakened ability, how do I rank them on the whole list? So let's start here with number 10, who I believe to be Spider-Man Classic. I think the buffed version of Spider-Man Classic, if you didn't know, this is actually the buffed version of him. He hasn't always been in this state. I think he's solid. I think he has a lot of damage. I think he has some decent utility with the taunt and the webbing. But for the most part, he's kind of just a cookie cutter. Hey, here's a 7-star champion that's, kind of okay. Not really going to do much for you. The awakened ability doesn't really matter. It's for defense for the most part, from what I can understand. I'm going to look at it really quick here. Yeah, the awakened ability is mostly defensive, but then there's also some offensive stuff as well. The duration of taunts increases, the potency of taunts is increased, and then webbing can stack up to 2 times at the 4 plus threshold. So, like I said, going and comparing all these characters at their unawakened level, I think Spidey is fine. I don't think he's super useful at the unawakened level. You get that awakened ability, he becomes a little more useful, but at the current state he's in, definitely not a bad champion. Looking at this from the perspective of a brand new Paragon getting 10 free 7 stars, he's definitely not bad to have. He's got decent damage and a little bit of utility with the taunt. So for him to be at the bottom of the list and still be pretty bad and still be pretty okay is definitely a good sign for the rest of this list going forward. So I just want to check one thing on my OBS. Okay, I was making sure I wasn't spoiling the whole list there at the top of my search bar. But I think Spidey comes in at number 10. Not the best, but, a free 7 star is a free 7 star, so you definitely got to take the win there. Number 9 might get a little controversial here, but I personally think number 9 is Gwenpool. So I just recently made a video about Gwenpool and how she holds up in 2024, and she feels good. Lots of damage and really fun to play. That's kind of it, though. She kind of falls into a similar category of Spidey, although I do think she has a little more relevant utility. Spidey really only brings taunt and suppression to the table, and both of those things are kind of weak on his end. Gwenpool has a pretty powerful armor break on her special 3, decent bleed damage, and a suppression on her special 2 that you can keep up basically indefinitely. So I think Gwenpool is going to be a really fun 7-star to use, and she's definitely not useless. Unawakened, she's totally fine to use. The Awakened ability gives her some utility in survivability and also reducing ability accuracy on the opponent. But for the most part, I think Gwenpool is going to be a fine 7-star to get. She's the second one in. She's either the second or the third one in the list. I don't remember. But I put her at number 9. She's towards the bottom because while she's really cool and this is the first introduction of her as a 7-star, she doesn't really bring a whole lot to the table aside from some cool and flashy damage. But damage sometimes isn't everything. And that's why I actually put her below the character I'm talking about next, which is Gambit. So, Gambit comes in at number 8 for me. I think Gambit is actually a little underrated. He's got some seriously solid utility where you don't take any damage from Thorns types effects when you use Gambit's medium. So, let me show that right here in his kit. Medium, heavy, special 1, and special 2. These attacks utilize bursts of kinetic energy, and they reduce the opponent's passive effects while being struck by 100%. So it's just like Omega Red, as the dev note says. This is very solid utility for a lot of annoying defenders, not just in the skill class. He doesn't really need the Awaken ability to benefit from really solid damage. His special 2 can hit pretty hard, and if you have the Gambit Relic, this special 2 is almost always going to crit, and you place an 85% concussion. The potency is affected by class relationships, so I believe against skill champions, it does go up to 100%. And Gambit also has a stun lock, so Gambit's special 1 can stun the opponent indefinitely. And if you have a relic attached, you can do some seriously cheesy things with Gambit and get some content down by just spamming the special 1 and going for a stun lock. So for those reasons, I think Gambit is definitely worthy of number 8. Not to say that that's the best spot to be in, but just overall, compared to the rest of the list here, I think that's where he falls. You can argue with me. I think that's totally fine if you think Gambit's higher, or even if you think Gambit's lower. That's totally fine. But personally, I think Gambit falls right at that number 8 spot. So moving on to number 7, I have Iron Man Infinity War. Now, I know what you're thinking. He's a defender. Yes, you're right. He's primarily a defender. But kind of the same thing with Gambit. He brings a lot of utility to the table. And he's got a decent form of damage that almost no champion is immune to. Now, the way he ramps that damage can vary, and if you can't get to your special 3, you lose out on it. But for longer form content, if you want to use Iron Man, you absolutely can, because that plasma from his special 3, and if you use the special 1 and special 2 to form the plasma, it's a passive, and nobody is immune to plasma. So that damage is consistent, as well as having these things called repulsor attacks. So kind of similar to Gambit's whole thing with the reduce damage on certain attacks. The first medium, first heavy hit, second and fourth light attack are point blank repulsor blasts. So they don't make contact, cannot be evaded, and deal energy damage. So not only is it non-contact, but it's non-contact, evade counter, energy damage. So just an incredibly powerful piece of utility in the base kit. You know, this is all disregarding the signature ability. So all of the utility Iron Man brings to the table. He also has armor break, heal block if the opponent is regenerating. The plasma, when the plasma is on the opponent and you use your repulsor attacks, you don't give them any power. I think you actually drain power. Yeah, right here. Repulsor hits that strike the opponent suffering from a shock or plasma effect generate 0 power and drain 2.5% of their current power. So you can theoretically ramp up a couple of plasmas and just never let the opponent throw a special by only using your mediums and your heavy attacks to hit them. And the more mediums you use, the more times you refresh that plasma, and the damage is decent. It's not insane, definitely not the most ridiculous damage by any stretch, but I think because of how much more utility he brings to the table, not even considering, you know, the armor that he gains, making him immune to bleed, and I think it's cold snap. Yeah, he goes bleed and cold snap when he has armor, and then the armor reduces the effectiveness of power drain, power steal, and power burn by 18%. That's each stack. So he brings a lot more utility to the table, and because of that, I think he definitely deserves to be above Gambit. You can fight me with that. I wouldn't disagree about putting Gambit above Iron Man, but personally, I think Iron Man just has the edge because of the utility. So that I put Iron Man squarely at number 7. I think he's a solid pick there. Now, number 6, I have Storm Pyramid X. So this is an interesting one. I think Storm is such a fascinating character. She has ridiculous damage and a solid amount of utility for the skill class and purifying champions in general. I think what pushes her above the prior characters I've mentioned is the damage that she can get up to is way higher and way more ridiculous than Gambit and Iron Man. Additionally, she doesn't need to be awakened to be a dual threat. So she has some dual threat potential in Battlegrounds and Alliance War just because she's an annoying defender. She has these glancing mechanics where in her Ice Tempest, she has a 60% chance to glance all incoming basic attacks. That's annoying. That's extremely annoying. And her specials hit hard. So if you get hit by a special, you're feeling some pain. Her basic attacks also deal energy damage instead of physical, kind of similar to Iron Man's repulsors. She has native energy resistance, and if the opponent purifies a stun, it is replaced with a passive stun. So this is not just skill opponent. This is any opponent purifying a stun debuff. So I think Storm is pretty solid, definitely underrated, especially with a crit stat focus. You can get some extremely solid numbers from that special 2, or if you go for the special 3 as well, you can get some solid numbers there. And like I said, does not need to be awakened. She is basically, her entire kit is built into the base form. You don't really need the awakened ability. You don't really benefit from it except for when you're at really low health, and you don't want to be playing at super low health in most content. So I think Storm, maybe a bit of a controversial pick, but I think she has enough damage and enough broad utility to be considered better than the 4 characters before her. And because of that, I put her at number 6. So that's halfway. That is 10 through 6. Now, we have the final 5 here. So, number 5, I have Jabari Panther. So, I was never really a fan of Jabari Panther because I never had her. I never really used her. But over time, I ended up using her for one of the CCP challenges, and then she's been part of some Eternity of Pain objectives. So, I've been getting a chance to use her more and more, and she's actually pretty powerful. She has a lot of utility with that cleanse mechanic that she basically has permanent access to. All attacks gain a non-stacking cleanse passive. When a champion with a cleanse is inflicted with a debuff, it is immediately purified. And this also happens on defense when she goes to attack. And there's no cooldown on offense. It just keeps repeating. There's no cooldown on offense. It's just cleanse after cleanse after cleanse. She has very decent damage when she's in her Huntress mode. So the Hunt right here, when she has at least 10 Huntress charges, and you gain these in various ways by, I believe, hitting the opponent when they're stunned, um, having any of your attacks be missed or evaded, you build up Huntress charges. It's very easy to get fully ramped up in a shorter form matchup. You get a ridiculously high precision buff. You go stun immune. You get Furies when you activate special attacks. It should, yeah, right here. Activating a special attack and the Hunt within 1 second of each other grants a non-stacking Fury buff, increasing attack by basically 4,000 for 9 seconds. So that Fury lingers after the special attack. So ideal rotation is you trigger the Hunt right into a special 2, massive damage from that. There are many hits to this special, and the Hunt is paused during the special 2. So not only do you have the Hunt activated right away, but the duration is locked for the duration of the special 2. So she's incredibly powerful. The special 3 makes her better for longer form content and gives her permanent Huntress charges, so your ramp up is significantly reduced if you're using her in health pool that is, around the millions. So I think she's incredibly strong. She has a decent signature ability. Doesn't really matter. The duration of the Hunt getting a bump is nice, but for the most part, as a base character, learning how to use Jabari, especially if she's one of your first 7 stars, again, that new Paragon level of getting these brand new 7 stars, I think Jabari is extremely powerful. So I rate her pretty highly. She's number 5 on the list, halfway point. I think that's a solid place for her. And yeah, I think she's a good character. All right, final 4 here. I put my girl, Guillotine 2099 at number 4. I've said so much about Guillotine in the past. I won Guillotine in 2019 at Comic-Con. She was the prize. And since then, I've used her nonstop. I absolutely love her. So much utility and so much damage. I mean, look right here. Survivability 4.5, damage 5, utility 4. She really is just a jack of all trades, master of none. She's a robot, so she's got the bleed and poison immunity. She has a strong regen under 15% health. She doesn't land crits, so you can use her for characters like Mr. Sinister. She has these Digisouls that provide extra utility when you have above 100 hits in your combo, or if you just use the Huntress function, every 20th attack on the combo is a crit. She's one of the only characters in the game. I believe she might be the only character that can choose when to land critical hits. That's utility in and of itself right there. Instead of dealing critical hits when she is not using that Huntress thing, if she would crit, she deals a degen debuff. Nobody is immune to degen. There are some characters with resistance, but most champions are not immune to it, so just extra guaranteed direct damage right there. And she is a ramp-up champ. She is a combo champion. So once you get past 100 hits in your combo, All of your attacks start to deal bursts of energy damage for each hit above 100, scaling with only base attacks, so no modifiers can increase this, and it caps at 600 hits. There isn't really any content right now where you can max out this ramp up for a 7-star rank 2 or 7-star rank 3 Guillotine. So the damage is ridiculous once you get going, and she's so good for Eternity of Pain style content. She's almost like she's made for it. She really is ridiculous. On defense, she can trigger a Digicloak, which is a miss. She has increased combat power rate. The special one, it power drains the opponent per captured soul, or not per captured soul, per Digisoul. So if you haven't used any souls, it drains what's it called? It drains 40% of the opponent's power, and it can go up to 80 if it doesn't make contact with the opponent. So if you're dexing this special on defense, you're losing basically all of your power because your dex the special attack, so it's super punishing. The special 2 has a Spectre debuff, reducing the regeneration rate by 120%. Not that you really need this because your damage is so high that most regen isn't going to matter. And then your special 3, if you kill the opponent at 5% health using the special 3, it's a guaranteed knockout, and it lets you start the next fight with 100 hits in your combo meter. So all of that, I mean, Guillotine is just such an incredible character, and will probably, in my opinion, I think she'll be the underrated MVP of this whole supply drop because of how much utility and how much variability she has in terms of where you can use her and how consistent she is. So I love Guillotine. I would have put her higher if I didn't acknowledge the power of the other characters properly. I would have been definitely biased, but I for sure think that she belongs in the top 5. Arguments could be made she goes in the top 3, but I'm very happy putting her at number 4. I think that's a very worthy spot for her. Now, we got the top 3. These 3 champions are going to be extremely, extremely useful for new Paragons and even some Valiants who might not have them. Starting with Wiccan. Wiccan is an incredibly powerful champion. He was released not that long ago. He's in the 7-star base pool, and he's kind of falling in the same category as Guillotine. Just so much utility, so much decent damage. Even though his damage numbers is 2.5 here, the damage is super consistent, and the utility he brings to the table is very relevant for the modern age. The reverse controls immunity, the armor break immunity, he has a neutralize, he has a form of regen against energy damage where you can basically regen all of it. I think that happens on his special 1. Yeah, recover 100% of missing health caused by energy damage from bursts and damaging effects. So stuff like Terrax or stuff like, what's another good example? Energy damage. Or Mephisto's Aura of Incineration. He can regen all of that back. So it's a solid regen buff from the special 1. Not to mention all of the spells here. He has, what, 4 or 5 spells in total? He's got Arcane Theft, which is a power gain passive, and the heavy attack itself, which is where you gain this spell, also nullifies certain buffs, precision, fury, power gain, and if you nullify that, it increases the potency of the power gain passive by 5% to 5%. So you definitely want to be using this to nullify those specific buffs. You can inflict a non-stacking neutralize passive neutralize, not a debuff, passive neutralize, for 5 seconds, and again, all of these spells can be paused. I recommend learning a lot more about Wiccan and all of these characters when you end up getting them to decide if you want to rank them up. I'm just giving you a very general overview of how I see them landing and where I rank them from 10 to 1, 1 to 10. So overall, I'm not going to go too much into the damage here. He's got just so many different forms of dealing damage. You can go for special 3, you can go for special 1, special 2 spam, you can go for special 1 spam. He just has a lot of utility, so much damage to being brought to the table, and he is very useful for a lot of annoying cosmic champions. Gallon being one of them. He's decent for Serpent. Just a lot of annoying cosmics he handles with relative ease. So I rate Wiccan pretty highly, and he deserves to be in the top 3 for this list. But now we come to the final 2, and I don't think anybody's really surprised that these 2 champions are the ones at the bottom, or at the top of the list here. I think number 2, and this is tentative because we don't actually know about Isophyne yet, but in terms of what we know from reading the kit, I'm going to actually put Vox at 2. So Vox is such a unique character. His damage comes from degeneration and converting buffs on himself into intensify passives, and then those intensify passives are converted into degen effects on the opponent, which gets stronger the more time goes on. He's got decent immunities, and he has a lot of utility as well. He's immune to poison, power burn, power drain, power lock, and special lock. So Penny Parker, eat your heart out. And then he also has this thing where his buffs are increased to 300% in terms of ability accuracy. So his buffs can't be failed. So glancing, domino, certain ability accuracy reduction, his buffs supersede the normal limits of ability accuracy reduction, and they can't be prevented by those means. So if you're fighting Maestro, for example, and you have that glancing, Vox is still going to gain those corrupted buffs because of the ability accuracy increase. And yeah, it's kind of hard to try and illustrate all of the characters' abilities in this one video, but just to do a basic overview, you want to build up as many buffs as you can using your medium attacks in your first light attack. You ideally want to go medium, light, medium to build up your buffs. And then you want to build to 1.9 bars of power, throw that special one, and all of those buffs get consumed and turn into degeneration debuffs of dealing damage over a fixed 13 seconds, consumes all of your corrupted buffs, and then ideally you ramp back up to your special 2, and what your special 2 is going to do is pause the degen. So right here, where does it say? Personal degens are paused during Vox's special attacks as long as the entire attack strikes the opponent. So just make sure that first hit connects and you're golden. You build up to your special 2 after you've thrown your special 1 to turn those buffs into degens, and that special 2 lasts a long time. You get a vigilance buff during it, so that's nice. You can bypass miss during the special 2, and then you also have it after the fact. And the duration of the special 2 allows your degens to really ramp up in the damage department, and you see some incredible results. A rank 1 7-star Vox deals some sweet, sweet damage, and I think a lot of people are going to be excited to get their hands on Vox because not only is he an incredible character, one of the best cosmics released in the past couple of years, but he looks so badass. I mean, look at this. It's like Shadow the Hedgehog with wings. It's so cool. Shout out Sonic and Shadow Generations. Haven't played it, but I want to. So I think Vox lands squarely at number 2 for this list, and that obviously means that Isophyne is number 1. Her champion spotlight is live on the website. And not to go over the whole thing here, but essentially she is a mystic nuke, sort of. I don't know how nukey she's going to be. Again, I'm tentatively putting her at number 1 because I do think being a 2024 champion and having this new ability with the fractured power bar, the utility from her special 1 and special 2, these ego passives with the attack rating, all of that combined, I think she's probably going to be the best character in this supply drop, but there is, of course, time before we get our hands on Isophyne, so I am tentatively putting her here. I think in the long run, this is a good placement for her. Arguments could be made that maybe Vox is better even knowing the abilities of Isophyne, but I think just for right now, it is safe to say that out of the 10 characters in the supply drop, I think Isophyne is probably going to be the best. Lots of utility and decent damage. That special 1 nullifies 2 buffs and inflicts energy vulnerability passives. It can inflict up to 2 if you activate the special 1 when you're above 2 bars of power. The special 2 is where you get your big damage and also some decent utility with a passive 100% wither. Very, very solid. This is super unique for a mystic character to have a wither. So, yeah, I think the only other character with it is Juggernaut, and his is a 50% wither debuff. So, very, very decent. And, of course, for each ego passive, which you gain by crossing a threshold of power, I think? Yeah, whenever Isophyne crosses a bar of power, or when she nullifies a buff on the opponent. They expire one at a time, so it's very easy to stay pretty topped up on them. You get an attack increase during the special 2 for each ego passive, and that is a very, very high fury passive for, considering you have 7 or 8 of them, that's basically 8,000 increased attack rating on top of everything else. You know, the energy vulnerabilities you might have from the special 1 are going to increase that damage, so on and so forth. And then the special 3, you have a nice degen passive for 35 seconds, which is pause during specials. Interesting, very interesting. I have some ideas about what I could be doing with this special 3 degen, but I'll keep those close to the vest until we actually get our hands on Isophyne. But yeah, that is going to do it for this video. I really hope you guys enjoyed this little overview of the supply drop. Let me know your thoughts down below. Do you agree with my rankings? Do you disagree with some of them? I think there might be some contention with like Gambit and Iron Man and that whole placement, and probably Storm as well. I could see any of these three being swapped around, and I think the list would still make a lot of sense. But for the most part, I think 10, 9, and then 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 are solid. 8, 7, 6, 5309. 876 can probably be debated, and I don't have any quarrels about that. I think any debates that people have are totally valid for those specific spots. But I think for the most part, this is a solid overview of those characters for the supply drop. So if you like this video, I hope that you did. Thank you so much for watching, hopefully the whole way. I appreciate it. Make sure to hit the like button, subscribe if you have not already. We are getting close to that 40,000 subscriber milestone, so we're on that road, and I appreciate you all sticking along for the ride with me. It has been great, and I cannot wait to continue making more content. So let's get pumped for the supply drop. It's coming in literally, what, 3 or 2 days from the release of this video? I'm not sure when this comes out. It might be on the 8th or the 9th, but it comes out basically, you know, in a week, less than a week. So get pumped, get excited, and who's your favorite character from this list? I'd love to know in the comments below. All right, thank you again so much for watching, and I will see you all in the next one. Peace.